long do you think it takes him to recover his career?
Has he?
Secret agent man, secret agent man. They've given you a number and taken away your name.
Okay then, welcome back to EnterTheRealWorld.com. This is Secret Agent Men, a podcast discussing Bourne, James Bond, and Ethan Hunt, Mission Impossible. This is episode 5, Mission Impossible 3. My name is Matt Waters. I'm joined for this endeavour, as always, by my fellow Secret Agent man, Ben Phillips. How are you?
I'm good. Congratulations to Star Wars to date this episode. Just grossing $1 billion at the box office.
Only just.
Almost a month after its release.
Do you remember when Endgame made how much in its opening?
It was like $650 million in an opening weekend. I remember at the start of 2019, I was just like, Disney have these 5 huge movies out next year. Which one do we think is going to be the highest grossing one? And no one was expecting Endgame, really.
I think I was. I wanted to be somewhat conservative about it. I don't think anyone could have seen Star Wars being one of the worst coming, but...
I mean, we say one of the worst.
Didn't all the others make $1 billion?
Oh, all of them made $1 billion, but I'm just intrigued whether or not...
I'm sure it will eventually outperform most of them, but yeah, for a Star Wars film, it opened soft. But this is not a Star Wars podcast, as much as you may be still looking things up. This is Secret Agent Men. This is Mission Impossible 3, released May of 2006. So, when was Mission Impossible 2 again? 2001? 2000. 6 years since the last Mission Impossible.
He has been trying to make this movie.
He sure has, and Bourne Identity and Bourne Supremacy have come out in the meantime. You know, there is some shaky cam happening, and I guess, anything is more, reined in than John Woo's, backflip kick extravaganza. But there's a little bit more, this is tactical ops shooting type stuff happening. That's not necessarily what Bourne is, but I feel we have some form of reaction happening here for the first time.
Yeah, this movie feels like it's kind of reacting both to Alias and to what Bourne has done to the genre.
Well, yes, J.J. Abrams has rocked up in his film debut, coming off of Alias, and Lost... Had it started?
Lost is finished 2 seasons at this point.
Oh, okay. So coming off Alias and Lost, he makes his film debut. He brings with him Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci from Alias, who had written The Island. They would go on to do Transformers, Star Trek, all kinds of stuff. I feel those two get attached to, a million different movies all the time. Franchise ones, I think they did Amazing Spider-Man. You can kind of tell that they've all worked together because there is a sort of, coherence to it stylistically. And it is very in JJ's wheelhouse, mystery boxes that go nowhere, and just sort of, I don't want to say it feels like a big episode of television, but a bit like that.
That's the thing. This feels like a reboot for Mission Impossible in some ways, because God knows it needed it after number 2.
Yeah. I think you're almost a reboot by default if there's been more than 5 years between films.
But then also, obviously, J.J. Abrams is coming from TV. I think at this point he had the pilot to Lost and maybe 4 or 5 disparate episodes of Alias to his name. It's not like he had this illustrious directing career beforehand. He directed a few episodes in the first 2 seasons of Alias, and then the pilot to Lost, which is obviously huge. The best thing he's ever directed.
Sure, yeah. I don't think he's a very good director, so I'm not really going to fight you on his best work.
And he also did 2 episodes of Felicity, which, that's the bigger tie to this movie, really.
Wow, yes. So it's 2 hours and 6 minutes, so it's slightly longer than Mission Impossible 2? I can't remember now, I forgot.
They've all been kind of a flat 2 hours, really, at this point.
Yeah. Interestingly, though, $150 million budget, so only 25 more than Mission Impossible 2, and I think there are reasons for that, which we'll get to. And I don't know if this is still true, allegedly the highest budget ever handed to a first-time film director. Probably is true. Disney don't hand the keys to people who've never directed a movie before. Like,
yeah, no, mostly they pick indie people, so like it's a huge bump for them. But they've got people who are going from $15 million budgets to, or maybe probably even less than $15 million, to be honest. But no, it's one of those things where, like, obviously Lost is this huge hit. At this point, it's finishing its second season. There is a reference to the show in the credits of this film.
Is there now?
Yes, if you were following along with one of the reality games or whatever it was that's going on between seasons, there's a reference to the Hanso Foundation in the credits where they get special thanks for the movie.
So this made $398 million, which is almost $150 million less than Mission Impossible 2. Now, there are some notes on that I will get to shortly, also tied to the budget coming down, I would say. But before that, there's how did we get here in the first place? And obviously John Woo was not asked to return. As I said, the only Mission Impossible director to not at least be asked. Brian De Palma said no, and I guess J.J. Abrams said no for 4, but
he's still involved in the franchise to this day. Like, he is still a producer on every single movie. It's what Bad Robot does nowadays.
He's a better producer than he is director.
That's the thing. Is like he funds these movies. I don't actually know what his involvement is with the franchise post this movie.
I don't know. He's in the room. He's bouncing ideas.
Bad Robot are involved in every movie post this point.
Isn't one of his parents a producer, or both of his parents producers? Like,
possibly.
I heard this like criticism against him in regards to Rise of the Skywalker. That, like, of course the guy whose parents are Hollywood producers and who got his son a gig writing Spider-Man wants to do a story about legacy and nepotism and family. Like, so, briefly, David Fincher was signed up to do this movie.
Hot damn.
I know, and he pieced out on it. Some of his wild ideas were the sale of body parts in Africa. Some sort of black market, let's buy organs, let's sell arms, I don't fucking know, literal arms dealers. He wanted Sylvester Stallone to be the villain. Sign me up for that fucking movie.
This, I presume, was in that kind of like period where he wasn't really making movies in between Panic Room and Zodiac. But yeah, it's one of those things where, like, because Fincher would have been insane, he probably would have pissed off everyone because he's such an exacting person. Why
Tom Cruise and David Fincher making a movie together.
Yeah. It's why, like, every single big budget movie of his has fallen apart. Like, it's why we'll never see his take on World War Z 2 for the best, most likely.
So Joe Carnahan was then asked aboard. He did Narc, which was huge. Oh, not huge, but well received. And he spent 15 months working on Mission Impossible 3. He cast Kenneth Branagh, who was going to play a Oklahoma City bomber-esque character as the villain. You can see how one might leap from Branagh to Philip Seymour Hoffman, but the character, very different. He also cast Carrie-Anne Moss and Scarlett Johansson after Tandy Newton declined to return. But then in 2004, he also quit, and he was not happy with the tone that they were going for. So you may remember I said this movie came out in 2006, and Carnahan quit 2 years before that. They were going to start shooting 1 month from when he quit. So many delays were happening, and then Cruise tapped J.J. Abrams famously. Like, we've said it on this podcast, you've probably heard it all over the internet. He basically binge-watched 2 seasons of Alias and was like, I like this, come direct Mission Impossible 3. And while he agreed, he did have his commitments to TV, so they had to push back filming by a year, at which point Kenneth Branagh, Carrie-Anne Moss and Scarlett Johansson all had to leave because they had to have careers. And then Paramount only fully greenlit the film just about a year before it released. And the conditions included trimming the budget, in particular Tom Cruise's salary, and they hired a new cast. Kerry Russell replaced Scarlett Johansson's character, and they brought in Michelle Monaghan. Is it Michelle? Yeah, it's Michelle Monaghan to... I mean, obviously she doesn't have... Carrie-Anne Moss was going to be a sort of surrogate for Tandy Newton, wherein she is both the love interest and an agent. But instead they just dropped the agent aspect, and Michelle Monaghan comes in there. And then, while promoting the movie, before we get to Tom Cruise, one of their marketing ideas was to place audio boxes in boxes that dispense the LA Times, and they would play the theme song for Mission Impossible. And many people probably justifiably thought, these look like bombs, and bomb squads had to detonate several of them. But they kept them out there in circulation anyway. So, allegedly, Tom Cruise asked Comedy Central to stop showing a South Park episode about Scientology, or he wouldn't promote this film, that he bent over backwards to have made, turned down he turned down Jason Bourne because he believed in Mission Impossible. But whether it's true or not, and he denies it, and his reps deny it, and of course they're going to deny it, in response, there was a boycott of this movie organised by South Park fans. I don't know how much of an impact that had on the box office take versus the general Tom Cruise jumps up and down on a sofa shenanigans that were happening. But yeah, certainly a massive sort of dip in the Tom Cruise blockbuster stakes, and I believe this is the lowest grossing one in the whole franchise.
Yeah, I mean, like, what? So the movie he promoted while he jumped on the sofa was War of the Worlds, which did almost $600 million worldwide. And then, like, a year later, this movie just about hits 400. So, like, we're already seeing it kind of like, it's not paying back what Tom Cruise should be doing. And he kind of stays away and licks his wounds for quite a while after this. Who the fuck watched Night and Day?
Not one person.
I mean, the most significant thing that happens in between is he does Valkyrie, which is where he meets Kristen McQuarrie. That's the most significant thing that happens after this movie in the kind of like fallow period of Tom Cruise's career.
He does his cameo in Tropic Thunder that goes down well, but you know, his sort of him-led movies are just tanking left and right. Also, fun fact, this is the last non-superhero movie to kick off the summer season. It has been nothing but superhero stuff since then.
What was 2007? Was that Spider-Man 3?
Or probably Dark Knight? No, Batman Begins?
Oh, Dark Knight was quite early, actually, yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know. One of those, but yeah, I believe it will be true in 2020 as well, but it certainly was true up to 2019.
Jesus.
Yeah, superhero movies have just dominated. Right, so our agent for this mission, Ethan Hunt, is back, and he's becoming unhinged. This is the character, not Tom Cruise the person, of course. Yeah, we see a more of a wild man version of Ethan. Remarkably, when he was doing batflip kicks and all sorts of stuff in Mission Impossible 2, he still had a sense of, zen about him, still flashing the smile, and the smile is coming out here as well. But he loses his cool quite a lot in this movie. He's also doing more shooting after he didn't touch a gun or didn't fire a bullet in Mission Impossible 1. He did his gung fu, his gun katas in Mission Impossible 2.
I mean, there was a lot of guns in Mission Impossible 2, but the fight, it still does come down to like a couple of bullets and just lots of missing stuff. Whereas this one feels so much more tactical and
it's
precise.
like, is Ethan like it felt like that was so far removed from what his job was in the early ones. It's like he is a infiltration specialist, a actor almost, and now it's like, his primary expertise is he's a military shooter. It's interesting. He has his stuff as a pretend family man, not pretend, he is legitimately trying to settle down and pass for a normal human.
Yeah, like he's retired at some point in between the second movie and this movie, or at least retired from field duty. He's in active training for kind of people within the IMF, but he doesn't. He tells his wife or his fiance, that he's working for like the transport bureau in the city that they're in.
They're in Virginia, which is of course where the CIA is, but I mean the IMF, I guess it's CIA adjacent. I don't know, but I think there is a throwaway line at the beginning, like, "Oh, I can't believe you drove all the way to Virginia to see us." So it's like, okay.
I think there is a point later in the series where someone who's in the CIA gets promoted to the head of the IMF. So I think they are very much like the CIA to the FBI kind of.
I would also say Tom Cruise is kind of trying his hardest with the serious acting this time. It's not that he hasn't been trying before, but like I feel he's really going for it here in those moments where the fiance/wife in peril stuff and the dual lives thing he's got going on, like when he has to lie to her, when he has to come up with reasons why he's going away, like he's really going for it. And I think being opposite Philip Seymour Hoffman in scenes doesn't hurt because you will act or else. But yeah, I feel this is his most earnest attempt at serious acting here.
The thing is, because it kind of like the previous movies have kind of coasted on Tom Cruise just being a charismatic person, and kind of relied on that. And whilst he has a physicality to how he does stuff, he definitely isn't. He hasn't done kind of big acting work since the kind of 80s or early 90s. In terms of he's great in Minority Report. He is great in War of the Worlds. Obviously, people have issues with that movie, but I don't think they fall on his performance.
Yeah.
But like he's a good actor who, but more often not, he kind of relies relies on just being naturally charismatic, and this movie does ask for him to show vulnerability at points, even if he is still kind of... I mean, the movie doesn't really have him out of control, but I think it's very noticeable that the final set piece of this movie involves him lying dead on the floor.
He hangs a man upside down out of a plane, Benjamin. What do you mean he's not out of control?
I mean...
It's fine. You can retract it. It's fine.
He is not out of control of kind of the character. If that makes, I'm trying to.
The actor is not out of control.
Yeah.
Okay. Our mission this time, so you kind of spelled a lot of it out. So despite stepping back from active field work in favour of training new IMF agents, Ethan is coaxed back in order to rescue one of his trainees, finds himself caught up in her mission to take down Owen Davian, who is an arms dealer, and he's after something called Rabbit's Foot that we will never find out what it truly is. My theory is it's Chimera from Mission Impossible 2, but that's just headcanon. So let's get into it. Owen motherfucking Davian is here. He is interrogating Ethan.
In medias res.
Yes, very much so. He wants to know where Rabbit's Foot is. He threatens to shoot a currently unknown woman at the count of 10. And he apparently follows through because one of the greatest pre-credit scenes in the history of movies, for my money, like count it, like I'm going to count to 10 and I'm going to kill her. And he fucking reaches 10 and we don't see the gun. We see him. We hear the gunshot and we go to that fuse and that opening title sequence, which is back. And it's incredible. Like, opening with the ending is a great choice, not something you would have seen coming based on how the first two... They're not trying anything structurally different. Like, I guess this is J.J. Abrams. Like, that feels a very TV thing to do. And,
yeah, I mean...
Lost is known for the flashbacks and stuff.
Yeah, it is.
So.
It is. I mean, and it's something I feel like has become kind of very commonplace and very... Not looked down upon, but kind of like quite an easy crutch to go, like, just starting your story in medias res to get your audience kind of involved. It's what Breaking Bad does at the top of his pilot. It is a narrative crutch that's been leaned on, but when done effectively, such as when you have Philip Seymour Hoffman there to deliver not even exposition, but just to kind of act in general.
Just be the possibly greatest actor of all time, as we used.
Yeah, and then you just kick off the movie, and you kind of left the point where it's like, well, what the fuck was that?
Exactly. Yeah, it's super fucking intriguing. It's a hell of an opening. Like, I have watched this scene on YouTube multiple times over the years, like without wanting to watch the entire movie. I've been like, you know what? I want to watch Philip Seymour Hoffman be a villain again. And because he's fucking great. He always is. And just controlling the emotional temperature of the room throughout this and just being this very unique kind of villain that is just calm. And it's like, he comes across as like, I am the only adult in this room. And like, look, I'm not fucking around. I will fucking shoot her. And he shoots her in the leg before he reaches 10. And it's like, he goes from calm and he's like, Rabbit's Foot's not in Paris. Where is it? To shouting and be like, you think I'm fucking around? Like, do you think, I guess he says, do you think I'm playing around? And Tom Cruise just, we've seen Ethan just be so cool, calm and collected at all times, like being smarmy and very occasionally getting a little bit emotional, but just to see him frantically rocking in the chair and being like, I swear to God, I'm going to kill you. Tears streaming down his face and everything. Like, it's so intense. It's so goddamn good. We miss you, Philip Seymour Hoffman. Like,
yeah.
On repeat.
I mean, I don't want every movie to do this, but like every once in a while, a movie does it effectively. Yeah. And I do really think this is very effective. I love that kind of like, even in points, like, because obviously pretty soon we're going to get the inverse of this scene with Ethan Hunt in control and Owen Davian kind of very not in control. But even then, he's still so relaxed. And
he's unflappable. I love that about him. He cannot be intimidated. He's just like, look, I do this for a fucking living, son. Let's go.
The only thing he asks is, what's your name?
Yeah.
What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? It's all he wants to know. Is because, like, I'm going to get out of this. And if I know your name, I can get everything about you.
Yeah, and he fucking gets it. And it's like, oh, Ethan, he fucking won that one as well. So we flash back post-credits. They don't really specify how much time, but I mean, I guess if you put it together and if it's all playing out in real time, like 2 days before, Ethan and Julia, who is this woman, Michelle Monaghan, are hosting an engagement party with Ethan, as you said, claiming he works for the Department of Transportation, but he does receive a secret message from IMF who ask him to go help this missing agent who was investigating Davian. Domesticated Ethan holding back how crazy he is a whole ass thing, and I really like it. Like, I've been saying to you in the lead up to rewatching this, all I remember is Philip Seymour Hoffman and Ethan trying to pretend he's a normal person. And it came out as I was watching it that I also remembered the Vatican scene. I just thought it was the fourth movie, so I guess I remembered the whole first hour. Talking about traffic as a living organism while Greg fucking Grunberg's showing up because he's in Lost.
No, it's because he's best mates with J.J. Abrams.
Is that why he's in both shows? He's in Lost and why he's in this, rather than he's in this because he's in Lost?
Yeah, like he's best friends with Greg Grunberg and J.J. Abrams are childhood friends. He's a series regular in Felicity and in Alias. He's in Lost.
He's in Star Wars.
He's in Star Wars. He's in Star Trek. He plays Chris Pine's dad in Star Trek.
No, he doesn't. It's Chris Hemsworth.
It's his adopted dad.
Uh-huh.
On the phone when he gets told off, he's adopted dad. But he's like literally they are best mates. This is why it's just one of those things.
But yeah, I just love Ethan trying to pass for normal.
Yeah, I love the beat where he's talking about traffic as an organism, and Greg Grunberg does the face where he's just kind of like, "Ugh, kill me, so boring," and then both women are just like, "I'd marry him." And it's like, is this request from Tom Cruise or is this? And then he fucking spies on his wife while she's chatting to her friends about kind of like all these stories, whilst watching them or lip reading them whilst he watches them.
Yeah.
To the point where she then can't remember something, so he shouts out from across a crowded party in the middle of making drinks the answer to the question.
And she's like, right. And then all of her friends are like, what the fuck? It's just great. And you're just waiting for him to fuck up. Oh, is this him? I hope so. And they get through all of this. And you know, they get the toast and everything. Does Ethan legit not have his parents anymore? Because in Mission Impossible 1, there was mention of a mother and an uncle. No mention of a father. And it's like, you know, have his parents died between one and this one? I don't know. But
who knows?
Or is it like he's a spy, his whole backstory is falsified? I don't know. We get the Aaron Paul sighting. Trippy. And then, so he gets his phone call and I like him throwing the ice out the back and then being like, oh, we're out of ice. It's like, I like he had to make it real, you know? Like, she obviously wasn't going to go check. Like, you could have just said we're out of ice, but he has to make it real. And he goes and meets Billy Crudup in a convenience store. And I think they have a nice little chemistry here, like, talking about the party and, like, you should have come, you should have invited me, you know, I wanted to, or whatever, and calling this mission his gift because he's sort of like nagging at him to come back and everything. He's like, oh no, family comes first, but if you could just come back and be an agent again, please. That would be great. The disposable camera as the delivery mechanism for the, like, this is how you're receiving your mission this time. I like that this is becoming a trope. He will get his missions on innocuous objects. And maybe that's something from the TV show. I don't know. But it's profoundly less dumb than the sunglasses, and it's less dated than the in-flight movie cassette from the first one. I thought this is the first, like, really, like, fun one of those. Because he walks past it and taps it, or I don't know if he put it there or whatever, but yeah, I like him and Billy Crudup for sure. And you know, we talked about Billy Crudup in Almost Famous and how he kind of, it seemed like the world was his for the taking, and he kind of just vanishes into not obscurity, but this isn't the kind of role you maybe saw him taking back when he was like in the running with people like Brad Pitt for leading roles in movies.
Yeah, I mean, he's fourth billed in this movie, which you really wouldn't expect.
Generous, I think.
I think he is credited above like Monaghan, Rhys Meyers, and Kerry Russell and Maggie Q. Mm-hmm. Which I assume Lawrence Fishburne is a
Fishburne gets the and, doesn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, it's Cruise, Hoffman, Rames, and then Crudup, who is the spoilers, the secondary villain of the movie.
Yeah, but until then, doing some nice work, I think.
Yeah, in kind of the role that Anthony Hopkins kind of took, but
I don't know. You get the idea he's lower than that. Like,
yeah, it's interesting. This is the first movie that's kind of going to give a structure to what IMF is. In the previous two movies, like Mission Impossible 1 is all in the field, apart from like when they go into Langley. Mission Impossible 2 also all in the field, but there is like some sightings of the inner workings because you have Hopkins giving the mission, and there are other people there on computers. Mm-hmm. Whereas this one's just like, oh yeah, we got the set from Alias, and we decided.
It's the CIA, there's a whole building, there's tech support, there's directors, there's handlers, like, I mean, because, they've made mention, various IMF agents and implying we're selecting you someone from the vast sort of rotary of people. And this is the first time it's like, okay, I believe it, that there are, like, dozens of agents out there. So, yeah, as mentioned, he takes the mission. He succeeds in rescuing Lindsay Farris, who is the first agent that he endorsed, I believe, after this, like, prolonged shootout. And she attempts to warn Ethan about something privately, but they realise too late she has, like, a little explosive... They say explosive and you're expecting, like, boom boom, but it's a weird little effect. It's cool. It's like a weird, like a strange noise, and then just one of her eyes just goes, and she's just dead instantly. The eye effect is fucked up. Before he goes on the mission, we see him having the nightmare, him tearing up as he lies to her about where he's going. And then when he actually shows up for the mission, he is all grins. And I don't think they fully leaned into it. They leaned like 70% of the way into it, that like he is trying to be a normal person and like have this normal life, but he lives for this shit. Almost that story of the addict, like he's clean, but like he's been forced to take another hit or something, and he loves it. And like Luther comes across as a bit of an asshole, like grilling him about like, what do you even like about this girl and stuff, and like they lay it on so heavy that like, you can't have a normal life. We go full tactical shooter as he like raids the place, and him and Maggie Q have got the like not quite night vision goggles as they're just moving and firing, which, as I said, is a far cry from what we've had before. We do still get that sort of John Woo style, he's got one bullet left, slow motion fire.
I do like that bit where it's good. Like they're running through the building, and then she's just like, I'm out of bullets. How many bullets do you have? He looks, sees only one guy left, and goes, enough.
And it's one.
Then, it's one. The guy goes in the building.
Now,
it's so supremely dumb, but it's just. I think what I really like about this movie is just how confident it is. I don't think it does anything spectacular. Like, obviously, all of J.J. Abrams' kind of like worst impulses are in this movie with the mystery box and the lens flare and all the rest of it. But I do think for a directorial debut in a 2-movie franchise that's based on a TV show, it is really actually quite confident in terms of like the stuff that it's bringing to the table. I think there are some interesting narrative decisions coming on later, but like you watch this scene where he's literally kind of pulling in his first kind of ingenue that he found in Kerry Russell, and then just letting her go like, oh, you get to be an action star now. Because obviously,
cool
like, Alias,
when they're like back to back clearing the room, all of that. She's great.
Yeah, I mean, like, because she was, I think the idea for Alias came from like a subplot in an episode of Felicity, and obviously he finds Jennifer Garner because that is J.J. Abrams' skill, is finding these actresses who go on to have like quite big careers and are all really good. I mean, because Kerry Russell, Jennifer Garner, and Evangeline Lilly
eventually,
are all really good finds, and getting to come back to this world with her is just really great. I mean, obviously, like she comes back in Star Wars as well. She's fine in Star Wars.
That's a let's toss you a cameo.
This just works, and I really dig it.
It's just it's so different from the first two. It is really fascinating that like there are 3 wildly different tones between these first 3 movies, but it doesn't feel overly jarring. It's just like, oh cool, this is what we're doing now. And like if it were worse, I could see that as a criticism of like there's no cohesion. Who is this character? But it works, I guess, because it's just been, this is just Tom Cruise doing Tom Cruise things. So if you just get some confident direction behind it, he'll make it work.
Well, the thing is, he picks J.J. Abrams. He knows what J.J. Abrams can do. He has, like, Tom Cruise has creative control in a lot of ways.
I mean, he picked John Woo. He picked Brian De Palma. Like, he picked them all.
And I just think this is the one that kind of clicks creatively. I think this is, up to this point, the most acclaimed of the movies. I know it's my favourite of the 3 we've done so far. It's probably my favourite movie we've covered so far for the podcast. I know you love Supremacy, but it is the best Mission Impossible. You're not going to say it's better than 1?
I really wish the second half were good. It is my hot take I've been sitting on all day. I think it's super fucking good right up until the twist, and then I think the back half is dull.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a part of the thing where J.J. Abrams can't do endings, and
not even the ending, just from...
No, sure, but like he struggles to kind of like bring all the ideas that he kind of lays out on line together.
That's why I think he's a good producer, because that's like a job of ideas. It's like, it's up to you, the writer, to figure out how to thread the needle on all this stuff. But here's all my like crazy stuff I've come up with. Have fun, Damon Lindelof. I wish Kerry Russell were around longer. Like, you've got me intrigued here by like, this is the first agent he avowed. Luther, like, asks his questions about, was there something going on with you? We get the, like, montage of him training her. She has this super badass, all too brief scene of doing the shooty bang bang stuff. But she's out of here. We get this weird, like, helicopters flying through wind turbines beat that I don't know where that came from, but it's there. It's a choice.
I mean, again, you text me, because I said on the Mission Impossible 2 episode, the breakdown of the team is... Ethan Hunt, Luther who can do a hat, and then guy who can fly helicopters.
Guy who is not American who can fly helicopters.
And woman, who in this case is Maggie
skills
Q.
Optional, yes. Yeah, the exact team makeup has been adhered to. Maggie Q has not slept with the villain that we know of, but we get somewhat close in an upcoming scene.
Yeah. And we do also get our first appearance of Eddie Marsan briefly in this scene.
Wasted, quite frankly.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is completely nothing role for him in this movie. I went to the Mission Impossible wiki just to go, like, did I miss a scene where he died? Is there a cutscene or something? It's just like...
Why is there a Mission Impossible wiki? I know there's a wiki for everything, but, like, what is hard to grasp about Mission Impossible? Is there, like, an extensive page on IMF?
I know.
Will it tell you what the rabbit's foot is?
No, it's mostly to keep track of, like, all the people who come in and out of these movies, because an awful lot of these characters are only in one movie, despite the fact surviving to the very end.
Well, there's a lot of turmoil between movies a lot of the time.
Yes.
It will settle down, but yeah. So Ethan is chewed out by IMF brass, led by Lawrence Fishburne. So he puts together this elaborate mission to go get Davian, which is, you know, who Lindsay got captured trying to get to. And they kidnap him from a charity event at the Vatican where he's trying to get the rabbit's foot, which we heard about in that first scene. Fishburne has this dumbass line about chocolate shouldn't make you fat, and yeah, whatever. And it's like, okay. But despite that line being bad, he is great here as a very domineering boss who is like, you know, you hate him because he's like telling off Tom Cruise, who is our lovely good boy who couldn't do no wrong. But I don't know how right he is, but like he goes on to like point out all these issues, and like Davian knows that we can't find him, and he like gets off on, you know, it emboldens him, and he's like correcting Musgrave as he like mentions the wrong author of the wrong Invisible Man. I just think he's like really flexing here, and like,
yeah, I mean, like,
Fishburne goes through this period of like not really trying after this, so like you gotta savor these good roles when you can with him, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite funny because a couple of years after this he goes on to do Hannibal, where he's playing a kind of a similar role, and he's also really good in that, but that gives him a little bit more field work. But no, he's having fun. I like pretty much all the Mission Impossible movies have a big name playing the head of the IMF. It's never a flashy role, but it's normally quite a fun role.
And they're normally set up to be somewhat villainous, and
they're antagonistic. But the thing I like, and the thing you said, is nothing he says is incorrect, because as far as he's aware, Ethan Hunt recommended him an agent. The agent got kidnapped on her first mission and then had a bomb installed inside her. He's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
This is someone who's supposed to be fully trained, and you've kind of like given her to me, and she fucks up on her first mission, and now we have nothing.
And they're quite right that they all could have died, because as I said, like, they call it an explosive device, so you're expecting an explosion and it only kills her, but like it could have been a full-on bomb and they could have all died. I do think you let it get on without a scan is a bit of an extreme comment, but like...
No, but the thing is, you don't know how much they do, because obviously the implication is we've seen the last movie. People wear different faces quite often in this franchise.
Is very true, and we've got a new version coming. Simon Pegg pops up in a role where he replaced Ricky fucking Gervais.
Oh, thank fuck.
I know. Fun fact, after Shaun of the Dead, he was interviewed about his like aspirations in Hollywood, and he said, it's not like I'm going to be in Mission Impossible 3. Surprise, motherfucker, here you are, doing a weird convoluted story about anti-God.
Yeah,
he really gets his claws into Abrams and this franchise, though.
Yeah, he really does. I mean, he's in all of Abrams' movies after this, apart from Super 8. He has the weird, like, the most mystery box, like, monologue in this movie, where it's literally just like, hey, this thing we don't know what it is. What if it's this thing?
That you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird one where, like, he becomes the actual tech guy when they already had a tech guy. But I guess Luther is getting more physical in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Luther is barely in the next one, and then he kind of makes his return for 5 and 6. But like, obviously, Benji graduates to kind of like field agent in the next movie in one of my favourite set pieces. In the franchise.
I remember him being good.
I mean, that's the thing, because he's in all of them. I mean, at this point, like, they've kind of drilled down. I think this is the third of the kind of main characters of the franchise. I think it's fair to say it is Cruise, Ving Rhames, and Simon Pegg at this point.
Yeah, somewhat replacing Ving Rhames, but yeah.
I mean, that's the thing is, obviously, I wonder if his role in the next one is because Ving Rhames was aging out, didn't want to come back, or didn't want to come back full time, so they wanted someone a bit younger, a bit hipper. But they find room for both of them going forward in the franchise, which is good. I think that's the thing is, like, we're starting to watch this franchise evolve and figure out what's working, and I think that's what makes it most impressive, is that it's willing to dump the stuff that isn't kind of clicking in some ways.
Like the continuity isn't sacred, or the core part is Ethan Hunt being crazy, and the rest is up for grabs. And even that wasn't the case early on, so... Yeah,
I mean, exactly. Like, you get to the point where they I mean, later on in the franchise, they don't get Jeremy Renner because he has to film Avengers. And Fallout doesn't miss a beat. And it's just one of those things where, like, there's a lot of interchangeable parts, but they understand, especially from this point onwards, what makes the franchise kind of click.
So Ethan, like, really struggles to come up with a reason why he has to go away for more than just one night. And, you know, to her credit, she is, you know, he says... trust me, and she's like, of course I trust you. And her doubt doesn't fall in like, are you going off to sleep with ladies? It's more like, are we real? So he marries her there and then in the hospital, and we get more of the rare Tom Cruise having sex in a movie thing here. I guess they found another one he has chemistry with. Katie Holmes was actually up for this role, interestingly.
That would have hurt the box office more, I think.
I probably. Yeah, he jumps up and down on the sofa, and then the lady it's about is in the movie too. Again, it's a nice effort to attach some emotional weight to Ethan that kind of hasn't really been there before. Like, you know, he's obviously concerned about Naya, but like, they fucking sent Naya in there and did her dirty, and he's like the only person who doesn't hate her in that movie, so it's hard to really attach. But you know, it's nice to give him that, and like, you know, he is now a married man, and we can start calling her his wife instead of his fiancée. So
let's talk about the Vatican.
They break into the Vatican, and firstly is the whole fake argument, everyone shouting at each other, doing the hand gestures. Is that a tiny bit racist? Or not really racist, but, you know, xenophobic?
No,
I think it is.
No, everyone in Italy's a bad driver. That's just how it works.
He scales the wall. Does he, like, take essentially a really high-def Polaroid of the perspective of the camera and then puts it over the front of the camera?
Yep, so they don't see him. And
then he does his clear riff on Mission Impossible 1, the cable descent thing. This time with precise calculation. A fun little device there. And then he disguises himself as a priest.
Yep.
He gets his way down into the lower...
Look, stop trying to rationalise this. Like, every single movement they do is, like, so overcomplicated for what they're trying to do. Because Tom Cruise scales the walls and dresses like a priest.
Yes.
Jonathan Rhys-Meyers disguises himself as a tourist to get into the same part of the building.
Yes.
Ving Rhames has to come in via diving through the
catacombs.
Through the catacombs. And then Meg Q drives a nice car in to go to the party. And it's like, all four of you got into this building without much hassle, but you all came through different entrances in like the most overcomplicated way possible. And I love it. It's so dumb. And it's just like, watching it this time, I was just like, why is anyone doing the things that they're doing? But also it's like, this is the kind of the big scale heist in this. And it does lead to Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Oh, thank God he's back. Maggie Q, like, taking the pictures of him with the compact as she's touching up her makeup, and then they, like, 3D print the rubber mask there and then, and just happen to have hairpiece and eyebrows that perfectly match his. And yeah, it's utterly amazing that they got Philip Seymour Hoffman to pretend to be Tom Cruise for a bit and do a little bit of running around and action-y stuff. And yeah, getting him to recite this poem that uses every sound in the English language, allegedly, so that they can, like, get a voice match on him. And we've got two Philip Seymour Hoffmans, and we've got a Philip Seymour Hoffman behind a door while, like, they're waiting for the voice to sync up, and then it comes out weird anyway, but whatever. It's good stuff. And, like, you know, Maggie bumping into him, so he, like, drops, he's spilling the wine on him. He's like, I would always spill wine on my custom-made Italian shirt or whatever. It's like, okay, dude. dude. Also, do you get custom-made shirts? I know you get custom-made suits, but I thought the shirt part was less bespoke. It's really good fun, and then you get Philip Seymour Hoffman getting to flirt outrageously with Maggie Q of like, what will we be doing in your hotel room while my shirt is off and stuff like that.
It's just good fun. I mean, this is the first movie he did after he won the Oscar.
Yeah.
We love him. He's so good. I think this is the scene I always think of when I'm back on this movie, is this kind of extended scene of them recruiting him. It's what I love about the Mission Impossible franchise is I feel is when they have a plan and the plan goes ever so slightly wrong, and then the entire thing is kind of cascading, trying to figure out a way to make it work. And this is like one of my favourite ones. I think the rest of the movie makes a mistake in that it kind of becomes more action based, whereas what you want is these just charismatic actors dealing with things going wrong. And it's why the Burj Khalifa set piece from the next movie is so well regarded.
Yes.
But yeah, no, but this is very much kind of like, I love that bit thing where where Maggie Q's like, oh, there's a guy coming, and he has to kind of like cough obsessively over the sink because the voice isn't matched up. And then
he definitely could have gotten rid of him with just non-verbal cues. Like,
he's like gesturing really hard at him, just go away, get
he
out.
could have just been he goes, are you okay? And he just looks at him and then looks back. It's like, you could have just nodded and like done a shoe type motion with your hand. Like, he made it look so suspicious. Anyway,
and then we go back to overcomplicated like heist moves because they have to park the car on a specific thing.
Yes,
and then
go into the sewer, blow up the car so he looks dead. And then there's that fun little moment where like the camera's on Hoffman, it moves over to Maggie Q or whoever, and then it moves back and it's Tom Cruise taking off his mask and everything. It's like that's a fun. I would like to see the behind the scenes of them just quickly switching places on that one. It's fun. And then we get the inverted interrogation, metaphorically and literally. Ethan interrogates Davian, who is utterly unintimidated, and it is revealed that he works for Lawrence Fishburne's character, Brassel. Well, for now it's revealed that.
There's a call from Brassel's office, is what we find out.
Yes. Because Lindsay had a letter sent to Ethan, I guess, in the event of her death, or maybe just anyway. And it contains this microdot that, like, they just put a pin in it because they have to decode it, and then they conveniently decode it right at this moment. And it appears that Brassel is the puppet master, and he ostensibly has Ethan's convoy attacked. They get Davian back, who, true to his word, kidnaps Julia and demands, go get my briefcase, or go get the rabbit's foot in 48 hours or she dies. So this interrogation scene, when they are, he is trying to do his threatening, I will kill you stuff, and he's just like, do you have a wife, a girlfriend? Like, I'm going to find her, I'm going to hurt her. And then just keeps asking his name, as you said, and all of that. Like, it's really fun to see them switch roles compared to the opening. And to see that, like, it just is not going well for Ethan in either version. He is so used to, like, I can get out of any situation, I can bluff, I can act, I can intimidate. And Davian just doesn't give a shit, and he's just better than him.
Yeah, and I love that he kind of, like, he keeps on trying to find the button that's gonna push him over the edge. He tries to say, we'll find your if you have a wife or a girlfriend or whatever. How very heteronormative of him.
Well, yes.
But that isn't working, so he goes to, like, I did what I did to that little blonde agent of yours. Tries a different tactic, which obviously causes him to go off the deep end, to start to like cut him out from underneath it, and then you have Luther shouting Ethan's name at him to get him to stop.
Yep. And then he's got everything he wants.
Which, yeah, again, all he needs is the name, even though we know he has an IMF agent in his pay. Yeah. At this point, it wouldn't be that hard to figure out which one of the 4 agents they sent.
Well, yes. But we are so used to seeing these kinds of scenes, and like the villain caves. Like, he comes up with something so extreme that the villain's like, okay, and it's really refreshing to see a villain who's just unflappable. It's like, okay, hang me outside the bottom of a fucking plane. And like, he looks like, but he still doesn't cave. And
yeah, I mean, like, the first thing he does after he's been pulled out was falling at the plane is kind of going like, all right, Ethan. He says his name to him, and that's how the scene ends.
Yeah, like, I still have this power. And in my opinion, that is the last good scene in the movie, and everything after this is either boring. I think the ending, there's some poignant stuff at the very end. So we'll keep going, but like, that is why I wouldn't go as far as to say like this is the best movie we've done so far, and I also don't know if it's better than Mission Impossible 1 overall. Like if it sustained this momentum of the first hour throughout, like whoa, great fucking movie. But I just think it's kind of like Mission Impossible 1, but the pieces have been jumbled around a bit, where instead of here's a good scene, here's something boring, here's a good scene, here's something boring, it's like here are all of the good scenes and now the rest is going to be all boring. And I don't know if it's more boring than the bad stuff in Mission Impossible 1, but like I really felt that like loss of momentum.
I do think that this kind of stretch of the movie now is less interesting. I will say I think a better director could have gotten a lot more use out of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge tunnel. This next scene is on.
It's in daylight, which again refreshing, and we have drones and helicopter gunfire and jumping over a chasm, and Tom Cruise looks old for the first time in that moment.
And it's such a kind of unique location in that.
Yeah.
Like it's this huge expanse of water, but it's kind of like completely open. Like you don't see either stretch of land on either side. I don't know. It just feels really interesting.
It feels like it should be more interesting than it is. Is that like I'm watching it all? I'm like, objectively, this should all be like wild and cool, but it's just somehow not. Despite
they're attacked by a drone that kind of blows up part of the convoy. A bunch of guys come out of a helicopter and start spraying cold foam.
To like melt, or something to like corrode the side to get Davian out. And when he picks up that phone at we get him frantically trying to get to the hospital, and then like when he calls her and Davian answers and he's like, don't threaten me, just don't. It's like, fuck yeah. Yeah, we get more Tom Cruise just always running as the IMF show up to arrest him, and he briefly makes a go for it.
The ultimate Tom Cruise running movie, this one.
Kind of. I think Minority Report, he's running a lot as well.
Yeah, but this one has like the final set piece of this movie is like run from this location to this location.
I guess that is the grand climax, just run a mile. So Brassel has Ethan brought in, and Musgrave helps him escape and is like, yo, Rabbit's Foot's in Shanghai. And he and his team put together another mission to go get the Rabbit's Foot. So the lip reading scene paying off is really, that's a nice touch. That like, it was a comedy moment at the beginning at the party, but then, Musgrave is trying to like verbally not give away that like, I'm still working with you, but he's like, Ethan, at least look at me. And then as soon as he does, he's like mouthing stuff for Emily lip reads it. And it's like, on some level, them subtitling it makes it less elegant, but then also we obviously can't lip read, and it would feel a bit weird if they tried to just convey it fully. I don't know.
I watch movies with subtitles, so
I do as well.
It was just more subtitles for me.
I agree, but we get the Winter Soldier elevator scene, and not done quite as well, but basically there as Ethan like is handed this something to help him like cut his way free, and then he beats up the three dudes in the elevator, and he heads to Shanghai. There's a brief scene of him in disguise and being Czech, and it's like it doesn't really go anywhere.
This is the most interesting part to me, because I feel like the Vatican scene is already the kind of big heist of the movie.
Yeah.
But then we get to this point where he has to make it from one building to another. Yeah. They can't drop him onto it and all these other different things. And so this is, for all intents and purposes, the sequel to the heist at Langley and the scene in the second movie where he has to go destroy Chimera.
They should have flipped them. This one is just not as interesting as Vatican.
But I think it works well enough in that scene where he's like drawing the buildings and the camera pans around to see his perspective.
Where he becomes Will Hunting for a minute.
Yeah, and then him jumping onto the building. It's all filmed pretty well. But then it's like the movie kind of goes like, we ran out of budget, so we can't do the actual tense bit of the heist.
Can't show you inside the building. Yeah, it just feels emotionally inappropriate now, almost. And like, obviously it's like he was told, go get Rabbit's Foot in 48 hours, and they're running out of time rapidly. But it just, I don't know, it just feels impotent compared to what we've already seen. Like, for them to be like, this is a thief's nightmare, after you just broke into the fucking Vatican, and you made a big song and dance about how it's a fortress, and it is, and like, you could never break into the Vatican. I don't know, to go from that to this, and like, admittedly, like, in a vacuum, it's cool that he is sitting there doing, like, as I said, like, he just reveals that he is an expert in maths and physics and stuff, and he's jotting his calculations, and he fulcrums from one building to the other and slides down and fucking whacks the dudes on the way down. It's all really cool. It's it's just, I don't know, it feels...
Yeah, I think it's a combination of the kind of two things in that the movie's already done a better set piece at this point.
Yeah.
It kind of undercuts itself by not showing you what goes on inside the building, with potentially more tension and stuff. But also, like, the sense of time just kind of completely vanishes, where you're given 48 hours, but most of that has to be cut away because he has to get to Shanghai.
Yeah,
because,
he's going to take his, like, 16-hour flight or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. It's a long flight, and he's got to wait through customs and all this kind of different bullshit.
And then they've got 2 hours, and they start planning it, and then when they actually go to start executing it, they've got like 20 minutes because they've got to procure all the stuff and logistically set it up, and it's just like, yeah, the sense of time is all over the place.
It feels like this was where they ran out of money.
I guess, yeah.
Like if this was maybe this was with a big budget, if they were going to give them more money, it would have been more interesting.
Corridor shootout, all of that stuff.
Or maybe like a lot of the budget for this movie is kind of based around development, and some of it was kind of thrown, like you have to count the money that was thrown at the prior version of it that had to be delayed. Or
they did have a year to film, and they started filming a year before it came out as well.
But I mean, but that's the thing is, I feel like from the next movie they start kind of going in with what the set pieces are going to be, and then they build the movie around that.
That's what they did in the first two, and I guess this is the first time they didn't do that, and I guess it seems like a bad way to do a movie, but I guess it's actually the proof is that those scenes have been great in previous ones. The Vatican one is obviously great.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I still think the scene is all good, but I do think this stretch is kind of hampered by, it feels like it's rushing to a conclusion. I think the conclusion pays off wonderfully, and obviously we disagree there, but like I do think, because of what he gets, he goes to meet Davian, and then...
Yeah, so he gets Rabbit's Foot, which is just a canister of something, so, clearly it's Chimera. And he goes to the rendezvous, and it's like, drink this, no questions, and then he wakes up in the opening scene of the movie, in that interrogation, only to reveal that it's Musgrave, not Brassel, who is working with Davian, and that it's not Julia in front of him. It is Davian's translator from the Vatican, who they, end of Mission Impossible 2'd.
Yeah, I mean, she did not do anything as bad as deserving to be shot in the head.
No. It's cool that we come back to this, that it all neatly, it's like, it's like, okay, cool, that stimulates my brain. But, I don't know, that you then learn the execution of It's Musgrave, not Brassel, isn't handled well. Allegedly they did it, that Crudup was reading off cue cards, because they changed it up, right up until they filmed it. And I think his performance up until here is good, and then I just don't think this quite works, because... I don't know, it just doesn't feel right to me, and it feels very TV episode twisty, and I don't mean that in a compliment.
No, yeah, I mean this is where J.J. Abrams gets his basing and grounding and stuff like that, and Billy Crudup isn't great, and I mean, but I think it is an issue in that like this movie is trying to make you feel like this guy has a history, and they haven't really solved that.
And like he has to do his shaky villain monologue about we're going to let them have Rabbit's Foot, so we're allowed to preemptively strike them and do what this country does best, coming in and imposing order in a terrorist nation.
I appreciate the movie kind of offs him, or not offs him, but kind of gets rid of him fairly quickly, because and then we're just like, right, run. Simon Pegg comes back, directs him via the phone to kind of where he needs to go, and then we get...
Davian got there real fast, because like we see him exit the room so that Crudup can come in and do the plot reveal, and then like by the time Cruise has like dispatched Crudup, by the way, those are... When Marston like injects him with the thing, the explosive charge, and when he bites Billy Crudup's hand, in both instances that is Tom Cruise's hand they've painted to look like the other actors, because he said that the injection thing legitimately hurt, so he wanted to control it, so he knew how much pain he could give himself or whatever, and then he also wanted to bite his own hand rather than bite another human. That's insane, what I just said, but it's true. But yeah, Davian is then just magically in this other location, just chilling, and I guess he drove there or something, but like I don't know, it just seemed like he got there real quick, and then Ethan is like frantically sprinting to get to him and everything.
I think he is good. I mean, because obviously this is the payoff, this is him going like, I told you I was going to be there, she was going to say your name.
Yeah, all of that is good, but just like while Tom Cruise is just running and asking Asian people to move, it's dull. And, like, you've got Simon Pegg doing his best to be funny over the phone and stuff, and it kind of works, but just, I don't know, I'm just so hit by how much momentum this movie lost from the moment of the bridge scene that, like, yeah, it's cool that, like, he shows up and Davian kind of calmly kicks his ass. Like,
I mean, he is having, like, some kind of, like, seizure or whatever during the entire fight.
Like, Ethan is winning, and then he, like, activates the device, so he's got, like, an convenient amount of time to do things. And, like, when he's scrambling on the floor and he, like, tries to do a takedown, and then Davian just sort of steps around it and fucking slugs him. Like, that's all good stuff. And saying, like, you know what, I'm going to kill her in front of you instead. Like,
I just think it's a smart move, because it goes, like, because obviously I don't think anyone would say that Philip Seymour Hoffman could beat up Tom Cruise, but this impediment, which is something they've set up earlier on in the movie, and has a solution, which they've set up earlier on in the movie, which leads to a really fun, tense moment in a second. I just think it's kind of clean, elegant writing. I just think the issues with it are kind of, it's a weird choice for this movie where the stakes get higher and higher and higher for it to come down to this at this point. Even though I love everything that's going on.
And then Ethan kind of wins by just going wild man on him. He's just like, rah! And just like tackles him.
And then he gets him hit by a car.
Yeah. Okay, bye Davian. You were the best villain this franchise is ever going to see. I mean, I haven't seen Fallout, but I would imagine it's hard to top Philip Seymour Hoffman in that opening scene.
We will discuss Fallout.
Wonderful. Also, Rogue Nation. Maybe that's got a good villain. I don't know about that one either.
Oh, anyway, Sean Harris.
We saw earlier when Kerry Russell had her charge activated, Ethan was like, have we got a defibrillator? I will shock her, it will short circuit the charge or whatever, and then I'll shock her back to life. And she dies before he can do it because it has to charge. So we know what he's going for, and he has to set up a makeshift one. He has to basically touch the mains almost.
Set up a makeshift one. He finds like a
cable. Yeah. And he wants his doctor wife to revive him, which, you know, if you want anyone to do this. However, this is a fucking giant circuit breaker style thing, so. But he makes a real point of teaching her how to use his gun, because he's going to be unconscious, and he can't guarantee there's no one else in the area. And he's quite right, because she has to kill a random unnamed henchman, and she kills Musgrave, which is interesting to give her that. You know, you'd think Ethan would close the loop on it, that, like, his friend betrayed him and then he kills him. And I like him, like, relating, it's like changing the batteries in the flashlight in the kitchen. Like, that's a nice little piece of grounding and relationship work there. I think they go a bit far. I don't want to tackle this from the perspective of, like, no woman could use a sword, like that dude with The Witcher. I'm not saying she can't shoot people. It's just, I don't know. I feel they go a little bit too far in, like, her competency with this, and I don't want it to be incompetent. It's just, I don't know. I don't quite know how to phrase it, but
I love it because, like, she's not good.
She does, like, do the reflection and the, like, diving shoot. She throws herself to her back and fires repeatedly. And,
like, I mean, I understand that it's fundamentally pop feminism in that way, like, because obviously, like, we are ascribing, like, the white male director who has a talent for kind of hiring pretty young women who are good at acting.
Yes.
But I
really like that she kills Musgrave. Like, I think that's a great call, like, to subvert that, as I said, that, like, you expect Ethan to be the one to do it. I wish it was a little bit more clumsy almost.
No, I just like this kind of flip that the movie does, where this final action set piece is being dominated by the woman who's been the damsel in distress because Tom Cruise is lying down on the floor. And I mean, again, I don't think this movie is, like, I think the first hour is the kind of the best part of this movie, but I also don't think the second hour hurts it. And I understand I'm higher on this franchise than you are.
I think if I liked what happened up until between the 40 minutes preceding it or half hour preceding it, I think I would like it more, because I think the stuff at the very end is good. It's just I had, like, really checked out by that point. I like when she revives him and, like, he bursts back into action and points a gun to, like, frantically try and protect her, because the last thing he was thinking before he died was, I must protect her. And that's a nice little moment there. And then all of the stuff, like, mocking what IMF stands for, like, Impossible Mission Force. Like, you're kidding me. Like, yeah.
And then a fun little party at IMF.
Yeah, like, Luther's saying he would never meet her because of the life they live and everything. And then it is really nice to see her chit-chatting with all of them. And, like, they get that nice little walk away and smile moment and everything. And Fishburne becoming like, it's that thing of, you see this in movies where, like, a character is foreshadowed as villainous and they act really cruelly. And then when they're not, they suddenly change and they're really nice. But I do think it works because, as we said, everything he said at the beginning was accurate. And also, when he brings Ethan in, ostensibly Ethan has done everything that, like, it seems like he's done and everything. So, like, well, he did do an unsanctioned mission in the Vatican. So I think it works, is what I'm saying long and badly. And for him to now be like, here's some money, very sorry, can we tempt you back? Oh, I want to go on my honeymoon. Fair enough. What's Rabbit's Foot? I'll tell you if you stay. And then he's like, no, I'm good. And he's like, fair enough. Yeah, like, closing the loop on Fishburne's performance, I think. Yeah, really good. And then we get that fucking terrible Kanye West song in the credits.
Yeah, we do.
You sent me the YouTube link to, and I was like, I have no memory of this.
Good movie. My favourite so far. Michael Giacchino score. I'm a fan. Lots of brass.
Yes. Oh yeah, they've had the 3 biggest names in composing, or 3 of the biggest names.
Giacchino wasn't that at this point, because Giacchino's maybe he'd be nominated for an Oscar at this point, but no, it's very much kind of like the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack is probably the best thing about the movie. Yeah. Is that Hans Zimmer does not like fuck around on that movie.
Nope. And Danny Elfman in the first one as well. So yeah. I don't know. I'm probably being overly harsh to that back stretch, but it's just when the highs are so high up until then, and then the rest is like mediocre to bad. It's like, and then
I think
I do think the end is good. It's just
I think this is properly like the start of Mission Impossible, because I think one is kind of figuring out what this franchise is going to be. 2
it wasn't even going to be a franchise. It's just, here's a movie. Not everything was a franchise once upon a time.
2 is what 2 is, and then this movie kind of starts building the template of what the franchise is going to be. And I think Ghost Protocol onwards is where they've kind of figured out what
there was a version of this podcast where we either skipped 1 and 2 or did both of them in one just to get them out of the way, because 3 is where it really becomes Mission Impossible. So yeah, I'm with you on that. So to close out, Villain Watch. Philip Seymour Hoffman is a god among men. So good, such a memorable villain. Like, as I said, that interrogation scene from the beginning, I've just pulled that up on YouTube at times just to be like, I just want to watch Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, I don't think we can count on one hand the amount of villains we're going to get that are better than what he does in this movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think he's particularly overly written. I just think he's got a lot of fun interactions with the cast, which I think quite a few of these movies, they'll kind of keep the villains separate for quite a while, whereas this movie has him interacting with the main cast. And obviously they separate them for that kind of last chunk, but...
Villains are a thing that like a lot of franchises struggle with. There are certain ones that do it really well and are known for it, and I guess they can kind of just do it in their sleep because it's so baked in. I am talking James Bond, and certain other franchises. And then there are ones that really struggle to have a memorable villain, and Bourne hasn't really managed it yet. Mission Impossible hadn't managed it until now, and they, Marvel gets a lot of stick for like a lot of the villains are underbaked or underdeveloped. It's huge for them, I think, a huge win for them to have one of the instances of, hey, you fucking nailed an original villain in the 21st century. Like, Lawrence Fishburne, up until you realise he's not a villain, I think is a good villain.
Billy Crudup is nothing.
There's a world where that twist works, and I do like his scene at the beginning. But yeah, and then Eddie Marsan is just completely underutilized as a lackey who has no real explanation of him.
Yeah, he escapes whatever. The last thing he did was like shove an explosive up Tom Cruise's nose.
Yeah. How did Tom survive? So I don't have any fun story. I mean, the ones for Mission Impossible 2 were fucking wild. Those won't be topped. But I do know he cracked 2 ribs, turning his torso too quickly. Because I mean, when he does that little fall onto the glass, it looks real painful, and obviously they didn't actually swing him from however high and far, but it just, it's a real convincing looking thud, and the whole like getting blown into a car and stuff, it all looks like it could be painful, but like they're obviously using CGI and not practical effects.
I don't think they did fake the him flying into the car. I mean, I
would imagine, it's probably like a winch, like they yanked him. But
yeah,
it all feels a little bit more measured and controlled in a way that.
Yes, I mean, I think it's a combination of J.J. Abrams being a first-time director, and the winch on the car is so noticeable because he flies in such a random direction from when the explosion goes off.
Like a perfect line.
But yeah, I mean, like there's a few like good stunts. I mean, obviously he jumps over the thing, which obviously is kind of weird. In that moment, he flies into the car, sliding down the building, him shooting out the tires on the car when he's like leaning out and holding on to the seatbelt. Yeah. All good fun, but nothing. The next movie.
Oh yeah, he's going to start breaking stuff soon. Forget your cracked ribs. So, female agency. Now, you texted me and said you think this is the best for that so far, and right up until that ending, my response was going to be, are you fucking high? Because Julia, for most of the movie, is a damsel until she's asked to do things at the end. Kerry Russell gets fridged after teasing some badassery. And Maggie Q's job here is to wear a ridiculous dress, drive a cool car, and have not quite a romance with Jonathan Rhys-Meyers, who himself is barely a character. And she has to apologise for getting shot at the end. Like, I don't know, like, not really a fan of a lot of that. But then I think they do save it by giving Julia that ending of, like, taking matters into her own hands. She kills the only remaining villain. Like, that stuff I'm good with. For what happens with Marie in Bourne, she's not taking a physical role, but then, like, the story they're presenting, it probably wouldn't be appropriate if she started shooting people.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key difference between Lindsay and Marie are that, like, for a moment, Lindsay is part of the action and she gets to be really good.
Yes, but for a whole movie, Marie was part of the action and gets to be good. Whereas this is the only appearance for Lindsay, and she's offed before. Like, I'm like, cool, show me this movie. Show me Tom Cruise and Lindsay having sexual, like, tension, and, like, you asking, did they bang? And is she the one that got away and he settled for the wife?
I think it's such a low bar for this kind of stuff. But
well, yes, I mean, with all of this, it's a giant. Yeah. None of them are good at it, but
yeah, but I do think that this is, like, Kerry Russell gets to have a scene where she's memorable and good, and while she's fridged, it's not as an emotionally manipulatively fridged, because it, like, this is the moment that kicks the plot off. Lindsay's death in this movie doesn't free him from the shackles of, like, the woman who's going to tie him down from the action, because if she survived, she comes with him, whereas in Bourne, this is the person who's retired with, and it's the reason why he goes back into action, is because she dies, and it feels so much more like, well, she's just dead weight around our necks.
But that's the same. Ethan goes back into action because of, well, he goes back into action to save her, and then he stays back in action to avenge her and all of that sort of stuff.
I just think there's differences in terms of, like, how it's handled. In
and
that,
she's the trigger point in Davian's trying to fuck with him stuff as well.
Yeah, like, I mean, it just feels different. I don't think it's great, but I also do think that, like, the fact that she gets stuff to do, and the fact that
look, we're talking Mission Impossible 1 that's bad at it, Mission Impossible 2 that's atrocious at it, Bourne Identity that's okay at it, Bourne Supremacy not good at it, but I don't know, probably marginally above Mission Impossible 1. So as we said, like, it's a low bar, and so far we haven't had it be great. I guess it's in contention with Bourne Identity, and it's potentially above it, but there are still things that are bothering me here. Like, Maggie Q in particular, I was not a fan of how little they were asking of her. That it's like, hey, can you just wear a sultry dress? And
I mean, that's the thing. The franchise is going to get to the point where it has the kind of, like, 3 to 4 man team that the movie's going to rely on.
Yeah, and I have heard that, like, the women get to, like, really be badasses in the future installments, and I'm excited for that. And I think there's, like, more than one woman on the team at some point, which, wow, I could be wrong there, but it's a problem with the genre, it's a problem with Hollywood. Bond, historically awful at it. But,
speaking of Bond,
yes, next week, Daddy's Home. Daniel Craig will be debuting in Casino Royale.
Craig is Daddy.
Yes, he is. I honestly don't remember how Female Agency will go for this one. I know, is it Quantum that is, like, real bad?
Quantum is the one that has the reference to Goldfinger.
Okay.
With like, oh, the girl's been painted gold, except this time she's covered in oil.
This has been a very 2 franchise heavy show so far in a podcast that is aimed to look at 3 franchises. We are finally going to look at some James Bond with the reboot with Casino Royale. I'm extremely excited for it. We have already had debates about whether it's going to be the best movie we cover in this podcast, and I'm super excited to find out if that is true. That will be next week. Go to intotherealworld.com, like, comment, subscribe, help us with algorithms and stuff, help us get discovered, and tell your friends, and talk to us. We will talk back probably. But yeah, until then, we don't have a cool sign-off, but go find out what the rabbit's foot is. I don't know.
It's not time to die yet.
God.
Secret agent man.